Well, a very good evening, good morning, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. Actually, here in Perth, Western Australia, it is midday. It's an absolutely glorious day. But anyway, regardless of that, do let me know where you are. Feel free to let me know if you're in Europe, if you're in the US, what's going on in your neck of the woods, so to speak. Before I get into the content today, which of course we're going to be talking about Angelite, just a reminder, I always do this. For the newbies, the returning visitors, first of all, though, welcome. Thank you for being part of my journey. And the reminder, of course, is I recognise that time is precious for everybody. It's very limited. And so for these reasons, because I do tend to go on a waffle, I put timestamps. There's chapters in the video description, so you can jump to the sections of the video that you're interested in. You don't have to feel compelled to watch the video from start to end. If you do so, congratulations. That must be a bit of an endurance challenge for you at different times. But anyway, before we get into it, just once again, I shall acknowledge your presence. And fair warning, the doggy's got new squeaky toys, okay? So my little boy, he's called Toby. So if he starts carrying on, I may have to stop and start, but I'll push on as best I can. Anyway, onwards and upwards. Now, when we talk about Angelite, the first thing I guess to acknowledge is actually what it looks like. And what we've got here is not a very good image, but it's an image nonetheless of an Angelite palm stone. Now, this is what I knew and understood Angelite to be before I actually started doing the video. It tends to be a bluish colour, but it can actually be a little bit blue-grey. And to me, it's an unexciting looking crystal. As much as I love crystals and I love the blues, I've never, it's all about personal preference. I don't have a problem with Angelite in as far as if I wasn't doing the channel, I wouldn't have been buying it. And this is because I'm drawn to other crystals with the blues that also carry similar or the same properties. So for instance, I absolutely love and adore celestite, which basically does the same thing that Angelite does when we're talking about metaphysical properties. But I'm also very much aware, because of course I've had so much time in the industry, if you like, that many people actually really love Angelite, and this might be you. So just to go into what it actually looks like, it does have a bit of a waxy texture to it. And when I say waxy texture, I mean to the eye, because of course when you've got a rock, and Angelite is a rock, it's a crystal, sometimes these crystals look like if you run your fingernail down them that you'll be able to scratch into them, which of course you can't, okay, because you can't. And the other thing is too that when it comes to Angelite, the stuff that I've been used to looking at historically actually doesn't have a lot of flaws in it. You'll see when we go on to the other images though that it can actually have some cracks in it, if you like. What do they call them? Striations or whatever. But either way, I've got a selection of images for us to look at. And suffice to say, look, it's very smooth looking. It's very blue. It actually is quite pretty. I prefer it when it's got the blue as opposed to the blue-grey. But the blue-grey is still very pretty as well. Now, as far as the Zodiac is concerned, it's recommended for those people born under the sun sign of Aquarius. As always, I say, look, don't let that influence your decision to buy a crystal, okay? Because there's no hard and fast rule that if you are under a certain sun sign that you can only use this crystal or you can't use that one. The bottom line is if it's got the attributes and you feel drawn to buying it, then buy it, because that's the crystal for you. Now, the other thing I'll say here too is, at this point in time, when I say if you are feeling drawn to buying a crystal, I recently had a conversation with somebody and said, look, there is a difference between you want one and you feel drawn to it, okay? Because when we're doing window shopping, we can look at a crystal and go, oh, that looks nice. I'd like to have a piece of that. But that doesn't actually mean that you're drawn to it. The drawn is the pull, where you actually have to buy it. And I find going into a store is actually the best way to get the pull, because it's usually associated with energy. As I've spoken to a number of people, they might go into a retail shop, a place that retails crystals, and feel that they're going in there because they're drawn to get a specific crystal. But once they arrive, excuse me while I have a cough. Sorry about that. Once they arrive at the store, they actually find that it's not that particular crystal that's pulling them, it's actually another one that's there. It might have similar attributes, though, I must admit, but generally it's a case of they'll hold them in their hand and they will feel, and one particular crystal will call to them. And it's in the same way. So let's say you went into a store, you wanted to get some angelite, you were convinced it was for you, and then you handled all of the particular angelite specimens that literally jumped out the pack to you. You became aware of them. You might hold a number of different ones, but there'll be one within all of them that will be the one that you go home with because you feel drawn to do that. So before I go into the metaphysical overview, I'll just actually draw your attention to this image that we've got here, because when you look at this one, you can see it, while it's still blue, it doesn't have the same depth of colour that the palm stone had that I've showed you. And it also doesn't look like what we've got on the thumbnail. What we're looking at here is a lighter colour blue, but you can also see on the right-hand little tower that there's some brown. This is the natural inclusions. It's part of the way the rock is formed. And so you can expect this when you're buying any crystal, that there's going to be some deviations from what you imagine, because when they do the carvings like calm stones and all the rest of it, they actually cherry pick the parts of the crystal that are obviously going to sell better, because most people aren't going to go for a palm stone of angelite that's got a bit of brown in it. But anyway, moving on to the overview, it's considered to be a very high vibrational stone with many metaphysical attributes of a spiritual nature and from a spiritual development perspective. So it's believed to speed up your aura and your chakras, actually, to raise the light vibration within you and your aura. And this process is often called an ascension process or a quickening. And it's said to help facilitate access to the higher realms and to be able to communicate with the light beings. And consequently, as we're able to do this, then we're able to access the higher or universal knowledge, the universal pool of wisdom. So it's also believed to open a person to be receptive to information, because it's all very well being able to access them, but if you can't see, understand and interpret the messages that are going to be conveyed to you, then it's going to be quite difficult to actually raise that vibration and access that knowledge and wisdom that you're aiming to do. Now, it's also called the Stone of Dreams because it's believed to help a person to recall their dreams and to interpret them and to get an understanding of symbolism. We could call it dream symbolism here, but a lot of the communication that comes through from the higher beings is actually symbolic. So it's said to benefit in that way. Now, the other thing is it's also said to support a person if they're actively seeking to do what we call lucid dreaming. Remembering, of course, that lucid dreaming is that space where you're asleep, but you're consciously asleep. You're sort of half asleep, half awake. You're just very aware of what's happening on a conscious level, although you're still in that sleep state. I'm sure you've all been there at some point in time. So now we get into the nitty-gritty stuff, which I'm always never really excited to talk about, but it does have its importance and relevance anyway. You know, when it comes to the mineral information, we actually need to understand for ourselves if it's going to be toxic, you know, if it's safe to handle, if it's safe to ingest. And this is the point of knowing in this particular situation, it's a calcium sulfate. So my understanding is that it's perfectly safe. When we look at the mineral hardness, we can see here it's supposed to be about 3.5. Now, as far as hardness goes, it's actually a very soft crystal because 10 is the hardest. And what that means is, obviously, we're going to have to look after it pretty well because it's going to get damaged easily. We see here as well that I go to the geosites, by the way, to get this kind of information, that the colours of angelite goes from a pale blue to a deeper blue or even a blue-grey. Now, when we talk about transparency, it's considered to be opaque to translucent. Never transparent, I don't think. You see here that it talks about the luster being a bit glassy or waxy. Yeah, I would agree with that. Obviously, it's a geosite. But anyway, as far as being common or abundant, it's actually considered to be very rare. I didn't know that. I thought it was fairly common, but that's news to me. And as far as when it's sourced, where it can be sourced, apparently it primarily comes from Peru and Mexico, but can also be found in Germany and the USA. But it would be remiss of me to not point out in this image here, what we're looking at is basically a slab that has got those little cracks in it that I was talking about before. And These don't actually affect, just so you know, if you're going to buy a tower or whatever, these cracks in that are not going to impact on the metaphysical function of the crystal, especially if you're looking for it as a palm stone or an ornament. But what it does mean, because it's a soft crystal, if it's got the cracks in it, it's going to actually break easily. It might be a case of if you knock it and you've got it carved in something, it will shatter along those points. So they're the vulnerabilities, shall we say, of a crystal. So before I talk about the images here, when it comes to the buying tips, just a reminder, especially if you're new to the channel, there's a couple of tips that you need to ask when you are buying online. Particularly, the images can be color enhanced, and also it's difficult to identify, looking at a photo, just how big something is. We might actually think it's a lot bigger than it is. For instance, if we look at the sphere on the top left, that might, hazarding a guess. Okay, I'm going to do because I've got no information on this particular sphere as to how big it is or whatever. I think looking at that, it would be fair to assume that it might be 5 or 6 centimeters diameter. But realistically, because I'm now getting used to looking at the photographs and the way they set the scene for the photograph, shall we say, I would be inclined to think that that's actually a very small sphere now, probably more like 2.5 centimeters diameter. So my recommendation would be, obviously, for anybody, if you're looking to buy online, make sure you get the dimensions. It's very important, firstly, to know the dimensions. How wide is it? How tall is it? Especially if you're talking about the obelisks, if I can speak, the obelisks and the towers. So you want to know the height, width, circumference, or whatever, if it's actually not necessarily the circumference of a sphere, but at least the diameter. So what is it? Height, width, and depth you want of any of these towers. And then you actually want to know the weight of them, because that's going to give you a very good idea of what you can expect to buy. You're going to be realistic when you're looking at a photograph. And from there, once you know that, you want to look at the location of the seller. In fact, actually, I'd look at the location of the seller to start with, because if the seller is perhaps, and I state this again and again, it must be boring for you if you are returning visitors, every time a crystal changes hands, the price goes up. So if it was sourced in Peru and it found its way to the US as a great big rock, and then it went from the US through to China, perhaps for carving, then each time it's been transported, somebody's put a markup on there. There's been a profit attached to it. So by the time it leaves China, after it's been carved and it goes to your wholesaler and then it goes to your retailer, you can imagine it's starting to get pretty expensive, okay? So you definitely want to buy closer to where it's actually sourced. So that's important. You want to look at the currency of the crystal that you're purchasing. For instance, the Australian dollar versus the US dollar is doing very poorly at the moment. So currency conversion needs to be taken into consideration, as do the freight costs. And then, of course, if you've got any taxes. Now, one of the other things that has crossed my mind, I'd forgotten about this, is actually there's generally payment processing fees. And if you've got currency conversion, you get currency conversion fees by the bank as well. So they're all considerations for when you're actually buying. Now, let's take a look at what might be the considerations specifically through to the Angelite. And most of this, I'm fairly confident, is genuine. That's why I've got these little genuine stickers on it. What I did was I actually put up these pictures of the pink and the one with the rainbow colours, because frankly my mind boggles that people would actually do this. Okay, the pink stuff is called Peruvian pink. Now this is where it's helpful to know the mineral background and to have gone to a geosite. Angelite does not come in the colour pink, so straight off the bat we know this is not Angelite. They can call it Peruvian pink Angelite if they like. I don't know what the actual material is. It could be glass, but it's definitely not Angelite. Now, as for the image underneath it, it's got these lovely hues on it and looks quite pretty. To be clear, at least the seller of that particular item said that it is titanium coated Angelite. Now, my understanding is if they put titanium onto a crystal, whether it's Angelite or anything else, it's kind of a paint, and then they apply heat to it, I think, so that it throws these rainbows. If you know more about this, feel free to make a comment. But either way, I just don't understand anybody doing that to a perfectly good crystal. Maybe they were trying to make it look better because it's got those natural brown cracks and flaws in it. And some people might think, unless they actually know about the metaphysical properties of crystals, that somehow detracts from its value to those of us in the metaphysical community. The bottom line is it doesn't actually. In fact, I'm one of those that actually appreciates the flaws. I'm not sure about you. I sort of think that it gives something extra to the angelite. So if I was to look at this middle image where you've got the 5 towers all standing upright and you've got a number of them with the brown, I think my gut instinct would be that the browns represent a grounding aspect, which really is, when you've got these high vibrational crystals, you can end up going off with the fairies. And so to me, it would be about keeping a balance there, bringing that, if you do access the higher realms and the information, that you can actually bring it down into your current existence and physical life. If you're not into metaphysical, I'm sorry, I just sort of said all of that stuff that probably will have you going like, what? Anyway, whatever, moving on. Because this is where we start to really take a more in-depth look at the metaphysical attributes of angelite. And this is the stuff me and my mates are into. We like this stuff. So for those of the cynics and that, feel free to move on by, or just watch and think whatever you like and make a comment if that's what you feel. So anyway, bottom line is angelite is credited to support people to access the higher realms. And that means obviously being able to open a connection to your angels, your guardians, your spirit guides, your higher self aspect, totem animals, all of these kind of things. So it's believed to be an activator and opener of the psychic gifts, particularly your clairaudience, your clairsentience, and your clairvoyance. And also telepathic communication. Did I mention that? I can't remember now. That's amazing to do. Anyway, when we talk about totem animals and this kind of communication, we're actually also talking about being able to communicate with animals as well, because you do that telepathically if this is the kind of stuff that you're into. When we can access these realms, if you like, this is where we're able to access the universal knowledge and wisdom. And I say I just want you to understand here that we are all works in progress, and that pool of knowledge is considered to be unlimited. So I don't think there would be anybody walking on the planet today that actually has full knowledge and wisdom, especially when it's changing all the time. So anyway, it's considered to assist a person with their spiritual development, to heighten their awareness, to heighten their understanding. It's said to expand a person's vision to be able to see the truth in unbiased ways, and that's about projecting what you think and believe onto other people. You're able to see the truth and accept the truth. It's very positive. It's believed to repel negativity. What else have I got written here? Let me do another hum. Okay, just that it promotes astral travel and it's believed to act as a protector. The other interesting factor, of course, is when we talk about past life. A lot of people, I think when people get into the metaphysical and they see terms like past life, it becomes a bit fanciful. They want to go in there, take a look, maybe they were Cleopatra in a previous life, or, perhaps a Roman, whatever, they get a little bit romantic about it. But realistically, when we talk about past life healing, we would only generally do that if there's a need to it. And there's a need when there's a barrier blocking you in your physical existence, and it's inexplicable. So a prime example, I'll use myself in this instance. I had a fear of blood, and there was no reason why I should have one, but I did have one. And it bothered me for many years, I might add, because it just would stop me dead in my tracks if I saw it. I didn't faint. I did faint actually once when I cut myself, and I had a little blood squirt out my palm. Sorry for the visual. I was slicing and I didn't know the knife had been sharpened. Anyway, I dropped like a sack of potatoes onto the floor. But anyway, yes, so it impeded me. It certainly impeded me with my children when they were young, and they would have their own little accidents. that's a bit of a story I won't get into, but I recognised I needed to heal this issue, and what I did was a past life, God, what is the word for it these days? I've forgotten. Activity, meditation. And I was able to go back and find where the source of this blood, this discomfort came from, and to heal that. So then after that, it meant that if I saw blood, I didn't faint and get all disturbed anymore. I'm never a great fan of it, but I can cope with it. You can also do past life healing in your current life if that's what you're into. And when we talk about rebirth, ANGELITE is believed to support a rebirth, a new beginning, by prompting a person to take the first step. So it's not about carrying you across the whole new journey. It's about initiating the first steps, getting it happening. So that's all very positive. So there are a range of physical attributes for ANGELITE, but I must do that reminder that, while you can use your crystals as a complement to your current existing treatment plans with your doctors or medical professionals or whatever, and you can do it with your psychological and emotional health as well, but you absolutely would not disengage from your practitioner and rely on your crystals alone, because that would be contraindicative and I could get into big poo if I recommended that. So I absolutely don't. But there's no issue with working with the crystals if you've got any of these conditions. Now, I should point out that I sourced a lot of this information in regard to the physical healing from somebody that has apparently, I say claim because I don't know, I haven't seen the person's criteria, but apparently has tried and tested these out within a medical setting. I've got to say I struggle being a professional myself with my own qualifications in a Bachelor of Social Work, and based on my own experiences of working in the health fields, I would find it a little interesting, shall we say, for want of a better word, that somebody could work in a medical profession as a nurse, maybe in different countries, certainly not in Australia, and be handing out and prescribing crystals to people of a particular condition. This is because they're not considered to be evidence-based. But, I say but, evidence can be more than a research thing. This is just my viewpoint. I've spoken to people, for example, that have told me of things that they have seen as far as successful treatment goes using crystals. I've had my own experiences of it at different times, so I put this in here as well. But anyway, I'm totally digressing here. I'm going off down that meandering that I say I often do. Either way, back to the core message here is, do not disengage from your current treating plan. If you want to use your crystals for your physical health conditions and your emotional and psychological health, that's fine. Do them in conjunction. Use your crystals in conjunction with your doctor, because it really will not do any harm. Okay, so what does ANGELITE offer us? Well, apparently it speeds up any physical healing where there's a recovery process required. It's supposed to support the skeletal system if people have got issues with flexibility, arthritis, joint inflammation, bone breaks and fractures. I've got to make the point here as well, because I am aware of energy working with bone breaks and fractures, where you must make sure if there's been a break or a fracture that the bone is actually set before you really start working on trying to heal that, because otherwise it will heal in a way that might need a re-break later on, shall we say. Moving on from that. Okay, the circulatory system. It's said to support blood flow, your blood pressure. If people have got issues around coagulation, such as haemophiliacs, they might benefit from wearing or using it. I don't know if it would protect them against any knocks. If people have got low hemoglobin levels, it's also recommended for them. When it comes to the respiratory system, it's supposed to help to recover from throat ailments, and if a person's got throat infections, so that might be tonsillitis and even laryngitis and things like that. It's also said to promote cellular growth for tissue repair. And if people are suffering from stomach ailments and ulcers, or even struggling with weight loss because they're overweight, it's said to benefit those conditions. If you suffer from migraines, pain relief, or need pain relief rather, or recovering from infectious diseases, and even swelling. It's believed to act as a bit of a diuretic to reduce any swelling. And if you've got nervous injuries, or I would imagine when we talk about nervous injuries, that might even be acquired brain injuries as well. Let me just check my notes on that. My notes say the nervous system and healing of the brain. So I guess, yeah, if you do have an acquired brain injury or are recovering from a stroke or something like that, you might actually benefit from having a piece of angelite under your pillow, or wearing it on your person. Now, the other interesting factors too, because it's associated with the throat, it's actually believed to be beneficial for those people that do public speaking or oration, if that's how you pronounce it, oratory skills, singing. And if people are trying to learn new languages, it's supposed to be of assistance there. So, from an emotional and thinking perspective, it's believed to promote healthier relationships through this improved communication and the enhanced perspective, which allows a person to see problems or conflict from another person's perspective as well. And that obviously helps to find solutions that are beneficial to both sides, shall we say. If people suffer from anxiety and the depressive disorders, and that includes trauma, it's believed to calm, soothe, and assist and reduce some of these symptoms and tension. It's said to enhance mental clarity, and we referred to problem solving and decision making there. That's all part of it, being able to see clearly, and also to help people to accept, to release resistance to whatever's going on. And by doing that, we gain a greater sense of inner peace. So it's beneficial if you're a worrier. It helps to do emotional balance, because obviously it dissolves away the worry. And what else have I got? Just the extension of compassion. It builds compassion, and it's very good for reducing stress. Now, when it comes to the chakras, most sites are going to tell you that it's associated with the heart and throat and the crown, that it links them all together, which is true. I'm not going to say that it's not. But I also believe that it links through to the other chakra, which is about a foot above the crown, which I refer to as the rainbow chakra. Some people call it the celestial chakra. But if I had that included on the image here, excuse me while I cough again, one of those days. Okay, yes, if it was on the image here, it would be above the crown chakra. Probably, I don't know, I think twice the size, maybe. I could be wrong with that. Once again, your input is welcome. But either way, it really is a rainbow of colours that happen in that. And I think it's associated with the pineal gland. I can't remember now. But yes, when we talk about the chakras, I say the rainbow chakra, the crown, the brow, and the throat. But of course, it links with the heart too, because if you haven't got heart and compassion, then it's going to be very difficult to go up to those higher vibrations as well. So, as always, the way that we use a crystal, or the benefits that we're hoping to gain out of it, the intention, the purpose of our intention for using a crystal, is going to dictate how we actually use it. So if it's that you're wanting to enhance your dream recall, maybe you're one of those people that says, I don't have dreams. Well, we all have them. It's just that you're not remembering them. So what somebody like me would say, well, is, do you want to remember them? Well, if you do, pop a little piece of angelite under your pillow and get a dream journal, and ask your guides to wake you with message dreams, and make sure you note them down immediately when you wake up, okay? Then if it's communication enhancements for your relationships, if you find this breakdowns happening within the family because people aren't listening, they're not understanding, then you could keep some out in an environment as an ornament, or you could wear it as well, especially if you know that you're going into a tense and potentially argumentative space. The other thing is, if you're wanting to communicate with the higher realms, that is, connect with your guides and guardians, well, of course, you could wear it or hold it as a palm stone. You could have a sphere when you're doing meditation. If you're looking to do divination, some people will use the pendulum to get yes, no answers as part of developing their skills. So you might want to have a pendulum with it. What else have I got written down as there's any range of things that you can do with it. If you're into the gridding, you might want to actually place a piece over your third eye. If it's about being able to see and expand your vision, you would put it over your third eye. If it's about developing the communication strategies with your guides, which could be understanding the symbolism as part of dream interpretation or whatever, you might actually want to put a piece over your third eye and your throat chakra, or just your throat chakra. And I'm talking obviously about a tumble there, because you wouldn't want anything too weighty being placed on those areas. If it's the fact that you're struggling to process information, or you're trying to heal a brain injury or whatever, then maybe you want to put some on your crown. But if it's just general trying to recover from infections or whatever, then just wear it on your person in a pouch, or pop a little piece in your bra, that kind of thing. Anyway, have you got suggestions? Let us know your thoughts. How do you use Angelite, and how would you suggest other people do it? Now, as a messenger, frankly, I find, or my gut instinct, and I had to go away and think about this for a little while and find my own answers. My gut instinct is that Angelite, if you're drawn to it, certainly, to put this in perspective, okay, when I do services for people, I actually have a bowl full of crystals. They can put their hand in and pull one out, okay? Now, if somebody pulled out an Angelite tumble, I would interpret that, most generally speaking, as it's time to start paying attention to your dreams. Either spirit, as in past loved ones, or your angels and guides are trying to communicate with you through the sleep state, because this is when we generally are most open to receive the messages, as long as we can actually remember them. So it would be a case of encouraging a person, start paying attention to your dreams, get a dream journal, and start learning to unpack and interpret them, and start doing your research on the symbolism. What does it mean for you? And at the very least, start to communicate with your guides and try to understand the yes, no messages. Work out how to have a clear yes, no answer, and work out how to communicate by asking clear and concise questions that require a yes, no answer. Now, putting this into perspective, although this is not a psychic development workshop, what I mean by this is it's very easy in the early days of opening up to our communication to turn around and say, ask our guide something like, is it going to be better if I take the job over here, or should I take that job offer over there? Which one's best, right? Well, if you're looking for a yes, no answer, then you're going to get a nothing answer with that, okay? So you would rephrase it. Is it in my best interest, for the best possible outcomes, for me to pursue this job? Yes or no, right? That would be how you ask a clear question. I wouldn't necessarily ask that one, by the way. I'm just giving you some ideas, because the bottom line is spirit is never going to tell us what we should or shouldn't do, because we've got free will. Their role is to support us through the decision making, but we can get insight sometimes. Now, I've already mentioned that Angelite is very soft, so when it comes to crystal care, it's going to be easily damaged. Not only is it easily damaged because it's soft, it's also very susceptible to moisture and to temperature changes, so you do need to handle it very carefully. You would definitely not be wearing it under the shower, and you definitely would not be going swimming with it in a chlorinated pool. If you're a lady and you wear makeup and you've got your personal care products and all the rest of it, you'd be very careful that your Angelite didn't come in contact with that, because it reacts quite badly to chemicals as well, apparently. It's also apparently sensitive to sunlight. So if you're in the Australian environment particularly, you would not be putting it under your windowsill. Apparently, if you expose it, I forgot to mention this bit, if you expose Angelite to water, it's going to break down and turn into a powder, a gypsum type powder. So if you've got to wash it, you need to be very careful. The recommendation would be, and I think honestly, the only time that you would want to wash it is if you've had some greasy little mitts on it. Perhaps you've had some children come by with their greasy little hands and been attracted to it. So you would wipe it off with a damp cloth and then dry it off with a soft cloth. But you would get it dry as quickly as possible. If you're an energy worker, you might want to do the charging with the saging and the smudging. I think if you've watched the videos before, you know that my fallback is selenite. I will do smudging and incense and that kind of stuff from time to time, but I tend to rely on the selenite because it's easier. What else have I got? Just the reminder here that we do have a video. I've got a video on the channel, on the Crystal Magic playlist, on how to care for your crystals and how to attune them, because there are a wide variety of methods. And when you look at that, you will see potential options for you. I was just going to say, look, quite often I would make a recommendation that a person would pop a tumble stone, for example, onto the base of not the base of their pot plant, not in the garden. I will often put crystals in the garden, but there's always a risk of me losing them or the birds stealing them. So occasionally I'll put them into a pot plant around the plant itself. I would say in this instance, you wouldn't be doing that with angelite because of its sensitivity to water, and particularly if the soil's a bit on the damp side, it's going to actually help the angelite to break down, which is not what you want happen. Once you've cleansed it, of course, the best thing you can do is store it in a covered and dry place. Now, in Australia, I've got to say this because when we talk about moisture, a lot of people forget that our temperature here is so high in summer. We have different forms of air conditioning, and some of them can create a lot of humidity in the house as well. So I think if you've got that type of air conditioner, what do they call them? Evaporative or something like that, you would want to have that well away from your angelite. Well, my friends, old and new, if you've made it to this particular slide, you've done very well. Thank you. I appreciate you for being part of my journey. In the meantime, I'm going to say, look, that's it for today, folks. That's about all I can share with you. I invite you to make your comments, share your own experiences, share your own knowledge, because that all adds to the pool of conscious knowledge that we have. Feel free to call out, and I shall catch you on the next video. In the meantime, have a wonderful day, blessed day, take care, love you, leave you, see you on the next one. Bye-bye for now.